So I'd now like to introduce our Honorable Mayor, Emmett Badar, to give the introduction.
Thank you, Chris. Just want to clear something up. I can't pronounce our captain's name, so we call him Ash, and in the common known as Captain Ash, and he is here, and I appreciate that. You know, one of the smartest people that I think I've ever met was a guy named Kurt Morris. He's guided me through Planning Commission, through City Council, but I did not realize just how smart he was until this last year. He was smart. He figured out it's time to go. And he went, and I can tell you from March 12th on, it has been a roller coaster ride, ups and downs and everything else, as we all know. It started off March 12th. The next phone call I received, or the first phone call I received, was that the county had decided to take over the Motel 6 in San Dimas and convert it to a homeless center. Okay, and I said, okay, well, the next thing I know is that I find out that they're kicking our homeless out to move their homeless in. And it just didn't make a lot of sense, and to me or many members of the community. So there was a crusade started, and actually a demonstration. And then staff was able to reach out, and I had an opportunity to talk to the CEO of Motel 6. And I explained to him our situation, and in the middle of this conversation, he says, I was told by the county that you guys were all up for this. You guys were on board, and that's it. Why are you having a demonstration tomorrow in front of my hotel? And I said, well, we're not really up for it because the county forgot to tell us. So now we found out by hook or crook, and the reality is, no, we're not happy with it. We would have liked the conversation, and we could have worked something out. Went to the demonstration. 2 minutes before I took the mic, I received a phone call from him who said, we didn't realize, and we're backing out, and we've notified the county. So it was a very successful, I don't want to say it was a bluff, because we were willing to go as far as we needed to go, but it worked out pretty good. So we got through that crisis. Little did I know of all the next crises that were going to come along. The next thing I know, I hear we have a pandemic. And the things going through your mind is, okay, what's going to happen? How long is this going to take? Where's this going to affect us in progress and going forward in the city? You know, that word money always comes up. How are we going to make revenue? All these things are going to happen. How are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to keep the lights on? All kinds of things rushing through your mind in the middle of the night. And I'm saying to myself, God dang, Kurt, why did you do this to me? Okay, and eventually I talked with Kurt, and he said, you know what, we're going to get through this and weather it. And he's always been there when I needed to talk to him, and it's actually been very skimpy, because the words he told me in the beginning have weathered me through this. So then, you know, we had this pandemic word, and then unfortunately we for Chris's sake, this was probably okay for Chris, but you know, then the city had to experience the retirement of a long-term city employee and our city manager, Ken Duran, and he was a family member here, and we appreciate it, but he decided that retirement was time for him and his family. So then we had the search to find out Chris. We had no idea who we were going to take. We took something like 21 different candidates, and we had the opportunity to interview them, cut it down to 2 or 3, and eventually Chris Constantine was hired as the city manager, and he's doing a good job, a great job, a fabulous job. Okay, he's actually almost as good as Brad McKinney. We put Brad in there as the interim, and he took big steps. Okay, he's doing a great job as Chris's number 2 guy, and with the team that Chris has put together and Brad's put together and all the directors you just met, I think our most senior director, other than in her position, would be Sherry Garrett. But, you know, she was the number 2 to Krishna Patel. So I think our senior director probably has a year, maybe 2 years, and I think people in this audience know that San Dimas has been known for tenure. Okay, I think every director that I know when I came on board had 28, 29, 30 years. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if I ran them off or if they just decided to retire, but I'm hoping it's the latter. So we got through this thing. We got into this pandemic. It's been an up and down roller coaster ride. Probably we're the only city in the region that maintained their city hall open. It was functional, and our employees, we took into play when someone needed to be off or whatever, and handled their children and stuff. But our services never wandered off, and we are the only local city that maintained City Hall being open, and we're the only city that had in-person city council meetings, at least with the council pre and present. I had this belief that the community deserves to know and be able to see that their government is working for them. So we made a conscious vote to maintain our opening, and our staff was very good at making sure we maintained social distancing and just things just good. Today is going to be a little different than past. I'm not as good a speaker as most, so I've decided that I'm going to let, later on in this presentation, I'm going to let Chris Constantine, he likes to use the word new. He's been here 6 months, he's family, he's not new. So I'm going to let him go forward and tell us where we're at today and where we are planning to go tomorrow and what the long-term vision of San Dimas is. So I'm going to step down. I believe somebody else is going to come up here and speak, or maybe we're just going to stand here and look at the screen for a while. But, well, we'll go from there. But thank you very much for being here. 9 o'clock's not real early, but it might be real early for somebody. So I apologize that we couldn't push this off until noon or have lunch or anything like that, but maybe we'll start looking to get back to some of those type of events as we progress. Sylvia.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And next up, I'll go ahead and bring up Jerry Garner. I want to introduce him. Jerry Garner is a local real estate agent. He specializes in residential real estate. He has successfully worked through up and very difficult markets. He has accomplished this by working closely with local communities and always putting the customer first. Jerry Garner.
Good morning. On behalf of the San Dimas Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank the city for the opportunity to co-host this event. The past year has been very trying and a memorable one, to say the least. We are very proud to have been able to adapt quickly and continue our services to support the business community. As a business resource here in San Dimas, we ensure that we are meeting the needs of our members in the community. As a catalyst for business growth, we strive to create opportunities for businesses to connect with one another as well as members of the community. We've also continued to provide tools to assist the training, resources, and learning opportunities and legislative information that impacts businesses. In addition to great professional staff, the San Dimas Chamber of Commerce has the privilege of working with amazing volunteers who together achieve our efforts. Everyone from the board of directors, the ambassadors, and various event committees help our programs and events happen. We are proud to know that through our hard work, we have continued to make an impact on the community. In the past couple of months, we've seen very positive signs of economic resurgence locally as well as regionally. Businesses have seen an increase in foot traffic and a huge transformation from this time last year. Although we see an optimistic change, we know that our work towards recovery is just beginning, and we look forward to our work ahead. In closing, we humbly ask for the public to support those efforts and support our local businesses. And that's my prepared speech. But here's the thing. I'm very proud to have been part of a city and merchants and a chamber of commerce that have truly worked together to work through one of the toughest times that I've ever seen in my life. So once again, thank you for letting me be a small part of that.
Thank you, Jerry. And we value the relationship we have with the chamber. A city doesn't work without its businesses. I mentioned what my background was, where my family came from, a small village, for another reason. History is a definition of who we are. The past never goes away, even though we're looking to the future. And I know historically we've talked about history during the State of the City. And Kurt Morris talks about it better than anybody else. But today, I'd like to bring up another partner. It's the San Dimas Historical Society. That was established in 1966 and now reside within the Walker House as an all-volunteer nonprofit organization with its museum, archives, and gift shops that currently are one of the best outstanding examples of who we've been and who we are that define who we can be in the future. So I'd like to introduce Susan Davis, who's an archivist with the Historical Society for the past 12 years, to walk us through some PowerPoint slides and pictures of how we've transformed.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning. For those of you who have attended the San Dimas Historical Society dinners, you know me as one of the voices of San Dimas. But today, I'll be here. I step out from behind the curtain to ask, who knows the history of San Dimas? There are many things that have contributed to the history of San Dimas. But the arrival of the Santa Fe Railroad was one of the major catalysts in the development of San Dimas. The railroad met in San Dimas in 1887 with the first train coming through in April of 1887. The station that's shown in this photo was completed in 1889. The prior 2 years, they used a boxcar as the station. In 1895, the Southern Pacific completed its line through San Dimas, South Cataract Street. The first station featured a second-story living quarter for the station. Oh, thank you. For the station master, Tom Gore. This Victorian cottage was the first home built in the new town core in 1889. It was built for the Edward Marshall family, and Edward Marshall was land agent for the San Jose Ranch Company. The house actually still stands, and it's had a great renovation here. It's on First Street. Although the San Dimas Hotel was built in anticipation of a land boom that never happened, and the hotel never had a paying guest. It was built by the San Jose Land Company. Construction began in 1885 and completed in 1887 at a cost of $20,000. 2 years later, the building and 40 acres of land was sold to James and Sue Walker for $25,000. The Southern California climate proved to be outstanding for citrus. Starting with the first trees that were planted by Crawford Pinckney Teague, the citrus industry continued to grow, and with it, San Dimas. This is a picture of the San Gabriel Valley circa 1920. On the left, you can see Mount Baldy. And on the right, the white buildings are, at that time, Bonita Union High School, which is now the site of Damien High School. Following a fire which destroyed the packing house on San Dimas Avenue, the Orange Growers Association bought a new site on West Bonita, a more suitable site that was served by both the Santa Fe and Pacific Electric with a direct connection to the Southern Pacific. This is the new San Dimas Orange Growers Associate house in 1912. In 1908, the San Dimas Lemon constructed their packing house on the west side of town. It remained in operation until 1963 and became the last lemon packing house in Los Angeles County to close. At one time, this packing house was the largest lemon packing house in the world. A byproduct of the citrus industry was the Marmalade House. It opened in 1919 and closed in 1926 when it moved to Ontario. Most of the residents of San Dimas were happy to see it go because the smell of the rotting rinds that they tossed into the canyon behind the building was pretty atrocious, apparently. So the citrus industry provided jobs for most of the residents in San Dimas. The pickers dropped the fruit into canvas bags that were slung over their shoulder, and then the bags were dumped into what were called grove boxes and were transported to the packing houses. So in the days before motorized vehicles, wagons were required to transport freshly picked fruit to the packing houses. So first we have packing house workers in the 1900s. In the 1930s, women packers earned between $3.25 and $3.50 a day. But the fruit packing equipment became more modern in the late 1930s and into the 1940s. During World War II, packers were making as much as $1.25 an hour. Spirit of San Dimas, a World War II P-51 Mustang fighter, the pursuit aircraft was named as a result of $75,000 of war bonds being sold in San Dimas. So the demise of the citrus industry in the years following World War II, 1950 to 1960, saw the greatest migration from east to west that's ever been seen in history. The impact of these changes, land became too valuable, and growing citrus was no longer the most profitable option. So began the subtle and complex development of urbanization. So this is a 1970s housing development located off Covina Boulevard, west of Lone Hill. The first proposal to incorporate San Dimas was considered in January 1912. In April 1959, a proposal advanced the plan to incorporate San Dimas and Charter Oak to be called San Oaks. Obviously, neither of these came to fruition, and San Dimas became the 70th city in Los Angeles County at official ceremonies on August 4th, 1960. Now, the first city hall was in the education building rented from Pilgrim Holiness Church located at First Street in Monte Vista. And the second city hall, which was dedicated in 1962, was the west side of North Exchange Place. And finally, there was the San Dimas Civic Center, which was dedicated in 1969. And so then, San Dimas set about establishing a city. In 1970, you had the opening of the San Dimas High School. 71 saw the completion of the public library. In 72, they had the opening of the San Dimas Community Hospital. And San Dimas owns two major recreational facilities, the San Dimas Canyon Golf Course, and in 1981, completion of the San Dimas Swim and Racket Club. This is what the gateway to San Dimas looked like up to the 1980s. It was the Ready Mix Cement Company at the corner of Arrow Highway and Bonita Avenue. And thanks to redevelopment funds, the San Dimas Station was developed. We've got the Martin House at Walnut and Bonita Avenue, home of the San Dimas Chamber of Commerce. The Walker House, which was beautifully restored in 2010. Then came the Costco development in 2007, and the complex, which was completed in 2016. In 2017 was completion of downtown Bonita Avenue renovation and the clock tower ribbon cutting. The story of the city of San Dimas is a study of uniqueness, which combines old rural serenity and modern urban conveniences. We have Poston's General Store and First Post Office. It was located on the southwest corner of Bonita and Monte Vista. The post office was established in 1887. And the post office, through the years, moved quite a few times. At one point, it was actually at the hardware store. But in 1965, there was a new building built and located on the corner of 3rd Street and San Dimas Avenue. Where's John? What am I doing? Okay, there we go. So the San Dimas Post Office, the current one, was dedicated in 1988. The first grammar school in San Dimas was built in 1891 on South Cataract Street. The wood structure lasted until 1908, when it was replaced by the second grammar school. So in 1908, the second grammar school was built on the same site as the first. In 1917, an auditorium was added. By 1930, the main school, except for the auditorium, was torn down and rebuilt for the third time. In 1968, the school was declared unsafe by earthquake standards and closed. In 2021, Pioneer Park is located on the site of the grammar schools. The first San Dimas Sheriff Station opened in July of 1927. It was located at 116 North San Dimas Avenue. In 1949, it was moved, it's now a single-family home. So then in 1950, a new substation was built. I'm not sure why, but the address changed to 122 North San Dimas Avenue. And in 2006, we dedicated a new San Dimas station on Walnut, and this is the station in 2021. The San Dimas Feed and Fuel is the oldest continuously operating business in San Dimas. The building was constructed in 1897 by William Johnstone. All right? Okay, there was a building of the San Dimas Grain Company. There's the San Dimas Grain Company in 2021. In 1905, one of the earliest businesses to come to San Dimas was the Busy Bee restaurant on Bonita Avenue. In 2021, the San Dimas Wine Shop is open in the same building. So this photograph from 1907 shows the original Nair building, the boardhouse, Uncle Ben's Jewelry, the barber shop, and Snyder's Grocery, and Mr. Snyder is sitting in the horse and buggy in the foreground. In 1911, Mr. Nair took the original building, moved it back, and turned it to face Monte Vista. And then he built this concrete Nair block in its former location. So below is the Nair building in 1994, and the Nair building in 2014. So past, present, and into the future, San Dimas is an excellent adventure. Thank you.
For our State of the City address, I would like to bring up our newly selected city manager, Chris Constantine. Newly.
Well, since I respect my bosses, I guess I'm not new anymore, Mr. Mayor. And I'm also so proud to see the First Lady of San Dimas, Ms. Pam Bidar, and her grandchildren here today. Thank you for coming. We've seen a lot of change from what San Dimas was originally. It's pretty incredible to see that. We didn't live that change, but we can see it. And we're seeing it now. We are no longer a small town. We're a medium-sized city. But we can never forget our roots and that we still need to have that small town feel and to retain that for as far as we can. But that's not done without the help of many people. It's people that make our community, not the buildings, not the dirt, people. And we are fortunate to have had our city leaders, community members that rose to create and establish the city, our mayor and city council, who exerted the leadership no matter what adversity or odds came to the table, and for our community who, without pay or being asked, stepped forward to find ways to add to the vibrancy of this community that is now San Dimas, the city, but still San Dimas, the community. And as they say, we see in pictures are worth 1,000 words. We also see in picture that community. And as Emmett and I were sitting here and looking at the first picture, something attracted our attention. And it was that Kurt there on the train? It may have been his grandfather. But what I do know is any time you look at somebody and you think of somebody else that's been a big part of this community, that's an honor to demonstrate the impact that that person had, because that's what you go to when you see that picture. But when we look at these pictures, we now need to look at those pictures a little differently. Each of us see a picture and think different things, see different things, feel different things. So I ask all of you to look at the following. I love the water, so I took this picture years ago. And I asked you, what do you see? On its face, it's the waves crashing against the rocks. Is that what all of us see? Take more time. Slow down the pace of your life and look. What do you see? What does Chris see after spending hours of looking at this? I see an amazing system of weather, currents, water that pushes that water and waves onto those rocks. That over the course of hundreds and thousands of years has changed the formation of those rocks, the way we've seen that in San Dimas over the last more than 100 years. But it happens here very slowly, ever so slowly. We will never in our lifetimes recognize the changes that occur here. So I look at this, and I look to the left side of that picture, where I could see the water running off the rocks, and I wonder, why does it run off the way that it does? How were those pathways formed? Why those pathways? What changed, caused the change to cause it to flow this way? And then I ask, how do I feel about all this? This is eons and thousands of years to form the changes that you're seeing here. I feel serene. I feel good. This is positive. This is wonderful. It took many, 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 many years, and I won't live that long to see the next changes, but this is good. So then I ask, how about this? This is the result of vandalism in our community at our pool this week. It was the third instance of it in a week. Or this. This is Pioneer Park, and we saw the picture in the Historical Society presentation of graffiti, and at times gang graffiti. Or this. A recent development and flooding that occurred at the development. How do we feel? What do we see with this? We see a degradation of our community. We see a San Dimas that wasn't the San Dimas of the past. We see the results of a San Dimas that has now transitioned into a medium-sized city. And for many of us that have been here many years, who are generational, it's appalling. For those that are new, it's appalling. For those that have lived in worse communities, it may be a little better, but it's still appalling. So then we turn to this. Our wonderful volunteers, staff, sheriff's department, community members coming together for an event. Or this, the rodeo at the equestrian center. Or maybe this, Our law enforcement and city leveraging technology to enhance our public safety. Or this, which happened just this week, our wonderful school district's soccer team, they're champions. Or this, the dog park in the new grass. And lastly, this is one of my favorite pictures. We all know who this individual is. Mr. Scott Dilly, you here? Yes, you are. And Stephanie, one of our code enforcement officers, coming together for the Etch and Sketch event. An event that was precipitated by the numerous thefts of catalytic converters, which I only started to experience here when I arrived in January. But it took me aback to see it happening week after week. But here, we see that community coming together, the city, the schools, the private sector, to make our community better. So we ask, what is the difference between the pictures of the water and the pictures I showed to you today? Well, while we are very limited in what we can do to change the flow of the ocean and its impacts, and the length of time that it takes, for our community, there's so much more we can control if we come together as one community. And when you talk about community, it's the reason many of us and others who will come after us choose to come to San Dimas. It's the reason I came here. I don't have family here. I don't have a lot of friends here. I valued community and left to go find an incredible community, and I found it. And in that community, we see elements of safety, low crime that makes you feel comfortable at night walking down the street, amenities like the parks, the workout equipment, the recreation programs, and the infrastructure, that while we may complain about streets and sidewalks, we have some of the best streets and sidewalks throughout California when you take a look at other communities and how bad that they are. And our schools, because to some, those who have children, schools are important. To others, those that rely on healthcare is important. And all of that plays into developing our quality of life. And in a previous council meeting, we talked about quality of life. How we define it is different for all of us. If I'm 25, quality of life doesn't necessarily mean do I have great hospitals. It's different for me, as opposed to somebody who may be a senior or have health issues. But in the end, to me, I do see that a safe and clean city that has residents in a community that is fully engaged with plenty of opportunities for that engagement, for us to be healthy, and for us to know that our government is responsive to our needs, is the definition for me of an incredible quality of life. So when we talk about that quality of life, we also have to talk about what really matters. Our financial stability, and in the city, the services provided by our Administrative Services Department goes to this. Our community development that does our long-range planning, our public works and our parks that provide the amenities and infrastructures that many times we take for granted, but is so critical to our future. And lastly, but definitely not the last, our public safety, both police and fire. So let's talk a little bit about our financial sustainability. When we look at its most fundamental basic, most cities look to their general fund. This is the big operating budget that a city has. It has a lot of other funds, but the general fund is the largest. This is where your sales tax, property tax, and all the other general revenue goes. And this is where much of your expenditures that drive quality of life come from. When you take that revenue and subtract it by your expenditures, you're either positive or negative. So you're generating more revenue at the bottom line or more of an expense. And then you deduct that from what you have in your savings, which we call a fund balance, which is what you use to measure your health. So here's what we see for the last 5 years and what we predict for next year. In the blue is property tax. In the past, property tax could have been very variable. We all lived through 2009, 10, and 11, where we saw dramatic drops of 20 and 30% the value of homes. And for those looking for homes, that's a great opportunity. For a government that relies on property tax, which combined with sales tax represents 50% of our general operating to sustain all these wonderful programs and services that impact quality of life, it's devastating. But here we could see the results of low housing and high demand, a continuous increase in the value of homes, which translates into a continuous increase of revenue in property tax. But we see a difference in the other line, our sales tax. This line isn't the same for all communities throughout California. The pandemic has been devastating for many communities. For our community, we've been fortunate. And I believe we've been fortunate because we're an amazing community with a high quality of life. So we attracted some businesses that leveraged that quality of life and opportunity to service other communities during the pandemic and generate revenue for that business that translated into sales tax for our city. So you see the spike in 2020 and 21. First, we saw the drop when we all of a sudden, 8 days after the mayor started, the pandemic devastated and ravaged California. I don't believe it's a correlation.
Your evaluation is.
I believe the new leadership came at the right time to generate our ability to sustain ourselves. But what we saw was a smaller drop than what many other communities saw. And in this year, where we have communities that saw a tremendous drop, we saw an immense increase. Not an increase we can rely upon, but a one-time blessing to allow us to retain our services. And now we come back and predict we come back to reality with our sales tax. The other revenue sources, which constitute part of the rest of the 50%, are much more variable. And I won't highlight them all, but I will identify one in particular we should take note of, and it's this gray one. The gray one represents state and federal grants. We can say a lot of things about the federal and state government. And when research is done and you talk to folks and you ask them, what's your perception of the federal government and how great of a job they're doing? How many of us say it's a stellar job? And nobody's raising their hands. When we say that same question, ask that question of the state, some hands go up, but it's not that many. A lot more go up when we talk about the county, but the real difference is when you ask about how is your local government doing at the city, and far more people raise their hands, and in San Dimas, even more than many other communities. But here we have an example where the federal government did step up for us and see an incredible increase in COVID dollars when the pandemic hit, and even more as we predict now from the federal government under the American Rescue Plan. Part of an $8 million allocation we're eligible for that could sustain us for the next 2 years and allow us to plug holes that we would otherwise not be able to plug. On the expenditure side, which is the most important impact our quality of life, you could see here in the order of most dollars to the fewest dollars for our current budget coming up of where our money goes. Clearly, public safety is the most important priority because we vote for our priority with our dollars. And in public safety, it's number one. General services are services that span all our departments that also include benefits for employees that operate in every department. So clearly, we mentioned people as being important to quality of life, and here, obviously, it's a priority. And then the rest, down to a total of $29 million, which is far more than we've been spending ever before. And part of that is strategic, but part of that is also by necessity. When we add that revenue and expense together, we get a net difference at the bottom line. We predicted several years ago that we would be looking at deficits, and we are going to face them. But every year, those deficits are smaller than we predicted. When we approved the preliminary budget for next year, we were looking at a $3.5 million deficit. A few weeks later, when we approved the final budget, it's now 2.1. Still negative, but better. For the next 2 years, the federal money is going to sustain us and help us, but we have to make quick decisions that are strategic to protect the quality of life, because our revenues won't cover the expenses that we need to cover our quality of life. Our council and mayor and city leaders had been very fiscally prudent for the last 20 years. They believed, as all of us should, you should have a healthy amount of money in the bank. And as you can see in this, clearly, a tremendous amount of resources that we have in the bank that every year just continue to increase until this year. We still have far more money as a percent of our operations than many other cities, and we are the envy of so many. When I saw the percentages and we were looking at what are we going to do for next year's budget and realized we could hit as upwards of 90 and 95% reserves, it told me that we need to make good investments, because taxpayers don't give us dollars to just stick it in the bank. They give us dollars to provide services and programs to impact the community. So you saw the additions of a traffic officer. You saw us put $1 million towards capital improvements for things that will come years later, but that we hadn't planned for just yet. And that is important and crucial. In our administrative services, at least for the first time in my 6 months, we now have every senior position of leadership filled, with the addition of Mr. Scott Wasserman as our new Parks and Recreation Director. We're focused on building redundancies because we had many positions that only had critical positions that had one person that did the job and nobody prepared to be the backup to that position. So imagine when you lose your IT person and can't do IT, or your finance director who's critical to our fiscal sustainability and nobody's ready to step into that role yet. It could take us from a wonderfully strong government community and turn us into a nightmare very quickly. We are enhancing our capabilities. You saw my San Dimas on the TV on the back, and that's something that went live yesterday. We're looking at leveraging technology, and that's crucial. And we're relying on the $8 million the federal government will be passing on to our community, as well as expanding our geographic system IT and our asset management capabilities to understand that while it's great to have the Zumba class every year and that we could participate and understand it, it's a lot more difficult to know when I put cement in the ground, how it changes year to year. And if I don't do something now when it seemingly looks like it doesn't need anything, it will be 10 and 100 times worse if I just let it go for another 20 years without doing something. And so we needed to be aware of that. Our Public Works Department, thank you, Sherry, is phenomenal. They have a focus on protecting our environment. We all are aware of the dumping and garbage, the shopping carts, the graffiti, the mattresses that are dropped in the middle of the street. And it is Public Works in partnership with Waste Management that make the difference to clean that up. And while we've hired a traffic officer to help reduce our accidents, thank you, Officer Rojas, Deputy Rojas, who's in the back of the room there. Some of you may know with the tickets he may have issued to you. That we will still have accidents that require cleanup. That we will still have much of the trash that gets into our storm drains. That we will need to clean our restaurants downtown and in other parts of the city and sweep our streets to protect the environment. And while we may have a wonderful community and have a loving family at home, we can't operate without our streets and infrastructure. And we can't operate when that street and infrastructure is congested. So to the many employees that we have that do a wonderful job, we thank you. In the area of utility management, most cities don't have a lot of utilities. We don't. We rely upon the private sector. But when I ask the question of audiences, what is the type of activity that if it disappeared today, you will notice it right away when we talk about the government? And it's amazing to see so many people provide answers like police, fire. But would it make a difference to you if you flipped the light switch and it didn't work? Yes. Turn the faucet on and the water didn't run? Yes. And probably the worst of all, flush the toilet and it didn't flush. It is that infrastructure that is so critical that we forget, except until it breaks, and now it makes a difference. And it's so easy to forget it when we plan and use our resources, and by forgetting, it will impact our quality of life, not today, but it will tomorrow. And because we are a community, the research shows a community that is engaged is a community with high quality of life. And we have so many opportunities in this community that we do that. And our goal is to continue to grow them. And now coming out of the pandemic, when a lot of that reduced, we're seeing today the first indoor event. That is a community engagement, and we need to continue this. We are leveraging technology and tools. Many years ago, you couldn't tell the condition of the streets except when you looked at it. And how many of us can look at a street and know exactly what its condition is? How do we know the water that goes through the cracks, what it does to the foundation? How many of us know that when a car drives over that cracked, water-filled street, what that means and what that does to our roads? Not many. So we do use technology to assess the conditions so that we can make better decisions. And in that, we focus on what's important, safety. I want to know that my 3-year-old daughter, when she's in the car with me and we drive down the street, that I don't have to be afraid that we may die in a car crash in San Dimas. Or that when I'm driving down the street and I'm crossing a red light, I want to know that the likelihood that somebody crosses the opposite direction and hits me is low, which is why we look to our law enforcement and our traffic units. But I also want to know that our government understands all those pieces of our assets, plans it, and makes the changes necessary to keep us safe. And when we talk about planning, we have to look to our community development department. Community development is very nebulous. But we don't understand that it is the rubber meeting the road when we talk about what we are going to look like into the future. Within community development is the division of planning. They maintain our general plan. We have not updated our general plan in many, many, many years. Now that doesn't mean that a plan has to be updated every year to be a good plan. We have a good plan. We are a community that prides itself in single-family homes, open space, recreation, and our general plan reflects that. And to our city leadership, council and mayor, and community that provided the input, we've done a great job. But with those changes in the law, we're now being forced to look at alternatives, and we need to. With the change to a medium-sized city, we have no choice but to look at how do we change to retain this amazing community without letting somebody else dictate it to us. One of those areas that we are being dictated is in the area of housing. We are required to have affordable housing. It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea when we're the ones that drive that. We know that while you may have a home and have lived here for 40 years, what does it say when your children can't live in the community that they grew up in because it's too expensive? So yes, we need to look at our plans and address that. We need to support businesses like the downtown barbecue restaurant that's in the process to bring people to this community to enjoy the amenities that we have to offer. We have to look at building safe buildings and community. We're looking at 65 very large new homes in Brasada. And while not everybody may like Popeyes, it is better than a vacant building that was a restaurant before. And while we all need gas stations, it's much better to have a better looking gas station than an ugly one. And so it is community development that helps us there. But while we may have many rules, rules mean nothing if you're not enforcing them. We can have rules to protect us from violent crimes, but if there's not police to protect us to enforce those rules, and a court system that is willing to enforce those rules, it means nothing. And so in a city like ours, it's code enforcement that takes this role. They're also the ones that we probably complain about the most when they're coming to your house and saying, why is your car expired on the driveway? And citing you for that potentially. But it's that enforcement that allows us to pass laws and rules to protect our quality of life that we make sure are adhered to. So what does the future hold? Community development, in partnership with city administration, is forming a quality of life task force. Applications are being accepted for members through tomorrow at 4:30. So for those of you who truly believe you want to make an impact that's positive to this community, not just to cover up the effects of it, it isn't take aspirin when you have a headache. It's understand why you have the headache and fix the problem that's causing the headache so you don't need to take the aspirin. That's what the Quality of Life Task Force is supposed to do. Let's update our housing element to ensure we put affordable housing in the appropriate areas and sufficient to allow our children and those who need that level of home to be able to live in our community. Let's look at our downtown and transform it into a downtown that's commensurate with the city that we want to be and the size that we are. And let's update our plans and development and general plans to reflect the future that we want to see in San Dimas. To our parks and recreation, which is what we see when we drive through and wonder, wow, how beautiful is that grass? How amazing are those events? Look at all those kids at City Hall that are dancing and enjoying, and the families that are watching the children partake in that. It's not a common occurrence in many cities in California, but we see it here, and it makes a difference to our quality of life. So for parks and recreation, we're looking at going back to normal, as much of normal as we saw before. One of the first and major priorities I've tasked the Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. Scott Wasserman, is to develop a strategic plan. Because guess what? Proper planning prevents poor performance. We are looking to reopen our facilities, and it looks like next Monday we will do so. This building right now is open as we speak. We are looking to have a tremendous amount of programming. Just the other day, the mayor and I were at the park with the Mighty Mites, and yes, I asked to be part of the team, but unfortunately I'm too old to be a part of the Mighty Mites. But someday my daughter will be just right. We're looking at opening up our senior center for services towards our seniors, because as a community, we have a higher percentage population of seniors than many others, and we owe it to our community that no matter your age, young and old, we should have something for everybody. We are seeing other major events, national night outs that promote public safety. And if you hear last night, music in the park, and if you live close by a few blocks like I was, you still hear music in the park. And if you're Doran from Foothill Transit that lives across the park, you will always hear music in the park. Public safety is the obvious one. As I mentioned about utilities, you don't worry about it until you actually need it. And while we have a contract with the Sheriff's Department, and you guys do an amazing job, we hear less so about our fire department that's run through the county. And I say that's a great thing, because if we're not talking about it, it means they're doing very well. And our fire department is. My previous job was assistant city manager of Chico. And in 2018, we experienced the worst wildfire in the history of the United States. And I was responsible for helping residents that were called refugees who landed in parking lots at Walmart to find homes. And it was our fire department that made a huge difference. I left Chico partly because of the disasters like the fire and the impact it has on your quality of life to come here. So it was interesting to see 2 months before I arrived the big wildfires that happened on the north side of San Dimas. And I thought, is it because I'm coming to San Dimas that the fires are starting? I hope not. And then to be here and see the fire that happened on the south side on the Villa Verde Ridge. But once again, we didn't lose homes because of the wonderful service we get from the fire service. Just like we don't see the crimes that other communities do because of the wonderful service of the Sheriff's Department. So we need to continue that success by focusing on traffic safety and quality of life. It may not seem big to have somebody trying to slow you down, But when you exceed the speed limit of 35, the likelihood of death of great bodily injury becomes exponentially larger. So I will take that ticket when I'm driving too fast because I know it could mean somebody's life. We will leverage technology like cameras. That's a discussion we had this week at council, and that's a discussion we will continue to have to enhance and multiply our law enforcement resources. And the same thing we did this week, we will fight policies that degrade our quality of life, crimes that should be prosecuted that are not being prosecuted. And we will support fully our amazing law enforcement and fire professionals. We will support preparing our community for the inevitable future disaster. It will happen, be it a fire, possibly a flood in certain parts of our city, but more likely an earthquake. And we need to have the plans in place that can protect us to respond quickly to protect life and property. We need to educate our residents about basic fire safety because it's amazing to see how many are not prepared for a fire that may happen in their home. And we need to always be looking to the future and identifying those risks and asking, are we ready? And that's the strategicness of what we should be as a community. So then what's next? Unless you've been sleeping, you're probably familiar with the new app called My San Dimas, and there are many city employees that can help you get it. This was an endeavor that I was feeling strongly about because I believe our community residents are owed fantastic service from their government. If I need you to fix a pothole, I need to be able to get you that information as soon as possible. When I receive that request as a city employee, I need to be able to process it well, provide you the information of what's happening, and provide you the response when it's done. And we could do that through San Dimas. What you're seeing here is when you go to our website and click on My San Dimas, this is the web-based portal. There's a portal, there's an application that can be on your iPhone or Android phone. And for those of you that are technology challenged, like my parents who call me constantly to have help as to how do I turn the computer on, you can call City Hall, and the direction is that any and every employee is there to be available to assist you when it comes to putting those requests in, including doing it themselves, as well as taking information out to find the status. That's the level of customer service that we need as a community. We need to also become strategic. The council's hearing it constantly for me. We need to be strategic. We need to start focusing higher and not focusing lower. It's not about the trees, but it's about the forest. So we need to take those discussions about policy at the council level to be policy and not necessarily into the weeds where we don't have to. We need to balance and evaluate our resources because we don't have enough for all our quality of life. We need to align every aspect of our city organization to support what the community wants to achieve in an effective and efficient manner. And we need to have a task force that's not a 1 year, 6 month, short-term task force, but one that lasts the life of our community and continues to focus on the root causes of issues that impact our quality of life. And because you are all paying the bill, we need to measure our success and demonstrate to you that you're receiving value. We need to be engaging in strategic planning and always updating plans that are old. So in conclusion, what do I see ahead? I see as we dawn in the era of the pandemic that we will be coming forth to a new era where this community could be the #1 community in California. We deserve it, we can achieve it, but we can only do it if we act as one community. So with that, thank you. I'd like now to invite the CEO of the Chamber, Sylvia Melendez, and the Honorable Mayor, Emmett Bedard, because as we mentioned, a community isn't a community without people. And so there are some people we would like to honor today. Please come up. I will ask Sylvia to honor the business or nonprofit of the year.
Thank you. This organization that we will be presenting to is a very well-known organization here in the community. This organization is composed of business and professional persons united worldwide who provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards in all vocations, and help build goodwill and peace around the world. They have 35,000 clubs worldwide and 1.3 members. Locally, they have provided food for the Sheriff's Department. They have provided support for the fire department during fires. They have provided items for Mother's Day for House of Ruth. It is my honor to present the Business of the Year Award to the San Dimas Rotary. Diva, I invite you to come up, and Mike, and anybody else that would like to come up. We'll go ahead and take a picture. Yeah.
Rotary is an absolutely fantastic organization. They haven't hit me up yet. I was a Rotarian before, so I do expect a phone call. And you guys are pretty young at 60 years old recently, so congratulations. And the council honored them during their council meeting with a proclamation. And as we mentioned, community is not just organizations, but also individuals. So I'd like to introduce a community member of the year. As an accomplished executive with a distinguished career leading public safety initiatives and delivering on the needs of city government, this awardee has given much to the city of San Dimas. As the city's volunteer coordinator leading emergency response activities, our candidate is bringing a stronger, more robust community emergency response team, updating the city's emergency operations plans, which is many, many years old, and will be preparing robust training for internal staff as well as the community. He is the current chair of our Public Safety Commission, was selected by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department to participate in the recruitment process for the new San Dimas station captain, is an active member of the San Dimas Boosters, and continues to amaze me with his selfless community service to San Dimas. He has served in numerous law enforcement positions up to and including Chief of Police and Director of Public Safety for Sierra Madre, and served as a member of the City of Monterey Park Police Department. While our awardee is unfortunately unable to attend today, he's arriving tonight, unfortunately, the Mayor, Chamber CEO, and I are pleased to recognize Mr. Larry Giannone as Community Member of the Year. And just like our community, there are also employees that make a difference in our community. They're selfless, and sometimes it's a thankless job. So a city cannot achieve greatness without the amazing city staff, contractors, and other partners who work together to provide the high-quality service residents deserve. I met this individual early on and wondered, is he always cheerful? Is he always this cheerful? After 5 months, I can safely say that yes, he is indeed. During a difficult 2020 year with much transition, this outstanding employee stepped up in a big way to lead the city during the worst pandemic of our lifetime. He also took on the roles of several other employees in order to ensure the city continued to provide high-quality service. Our awardee has served in numerous organizations, including the city of Anaheim, and Disney was sorry to see him go, Claremont, Rosemead, Alhambra, and now San Dimas, where he will never leave. His perspective, experience, and most importantly, his focus on providing quality service has been most refreshing and are part of the reason why the city is making positive movements towards becoming a strategic and focused on delivering efficient, effective service. So the Mayor, Chamber CEO, and I are pleased to recognize San Dimas Assistant City Manager Brad McKinney as Employee of the Year. So, I was going to call your wife, but I love you. Margie, why don't you come up? Margie, would be in the middle. Where?
Take a picture.
I gotta get the big sign in the background too.
Thank you, Mark.
So you think it's over, right? We gave the 3 awards away, didn't we? Well, there's one more. This next awardee has been a resident of San Dimas since 1943, which is almost his entire life. He grew up in our small town and attended our public schools. He has been a fixture in our town's government and a decision maker for over 40 years. Among his many achievements, his best one, he married Glenda, his wife, and had 3 children who are now adults. He's a graduate of Stanford University and Loyola Law School, served as an officer in the United States Navy, served as mayor of San Dimas from 1996 to 2020. He's been a member of the city council in 1980 and retired in 2020. Chairman of the Los Angeles County Sheriff Contract Cities Liability Trust Fund and Claims Board. Try saying that with water in your mouth. Vice President and Chairman of the Claims and Coverage Committees of the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority. There are many other accomplishments that I could speak to, but I think everyone here will agree that his service has been a staple and instrumental to the incredible community that San Dimas has become and will remain. The COVID outbreak made a proper recognition difficult. But today, the mayor, chamber CEO, and I are proud to announce our awardee as Community Member of the Year, the Honorable Kurt Morris, retired. Don't go anywhere. Glenda, do you mind coming? They say behind every great man is a great woman. That was an understatement when we talk about Glenda.
This old lady can't go upstairs.
I just want to say, you know, I truly believe that Kurt Morris is probably the smartest man I know. And I said that earlier in jest, but it is actually very factual. First time I met Glenda, I met her at her front door. I walked in, and she pointed to 2 or 3 piles on the floor. And she said, Kurt just doesn't throw anything away. He has everything that's ever happened in this city right here in my living room floor. And I'm not going to say it's still there, but I would bet it quite is.
It's spread to 4 or 5 rooms.
But Glenda has served this community every bit as much as Kurt has. She's been there. I can only say that I feel like a part of their family. And fortunately for me, my wife and Glenda talk, and Glenda is giving her that guidance on how to keep me on some direction. So, but Glenda, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the mayor, the council, and to the community, thank you for attending, and that concludes today's State of the City.